once again, ladies and gents, and welcome to a lovely, warm and sunny Norfolk Broads. So then, for our hour-and-a-half trip this morning, we're going to be travelling down the River Bure, in between a couple of different villages to start with. We're then going to make our way towards the area of Wroxham Broad first, and then Salhouse Broad. Hope to get a bit of wildlife out there on either of those, and then we'll turn around and make our return trip to the yard. For the return leg then, I will just remain fairly quiet and leave you to enjoy your surroundings here in relative peace. To start with though, we've just left one of the oldest boatyards on the Broads, founded in 1878 by a gentleman called John Loynes. The boating tourism industry started here well over 100 years ago with converted wherries taking passengers on cruises around the Broads. About the same time, John Loynes took a few of his friends around the area in his 14-foot rowing dinghy. Now they were keen bird watchers. Understandably, they wanted to keep on stopping, whereas John was less inclined to do so. Therefore, they inquired afterwards if they would hire the boat from him in order to explore the Broads here by themselves at their own pace, as they enjoyed the experience of it so much, and thus the first form of boat hire was born. Over the following years and decades then, the boats have grown bigger, with Faircraft Loynes now offering the most up-to-date luxury cruises. Some of them even have whirlpool baths. Quite a leap really from John Loynes' first hire boat. Now the vessel that we're travelling on this morning, the Queen of the Broads, that's owned by a company called Broads Tours. This company was founded back in 1935 by an early retired bank manager whose name was Charles Hannaford. He was also a very talented artist and author who loved the Broads very, very much. This particular boat, the Queen of the Broads, was originally built back in 1977, and it is the largest passenger boat on the whole of the Norfolk Broads area. So then, nowadays, the Norfolk Broads pretty well known really for its hire boat industry. Loads of them around, some away to the left, for example here at our rivals Barnes Brickcraft. We have over 8 million visitors to the Norfolk Broads every single year. But the real pioneers of this boating tourism was a boat that was known as the Norfolk Wherry. Now the wherry began its life as a trading vessel, transporting goods and materials across these waters back in the 1800s. But they soon realised this wasn't going to be sustainable for business. So what they did was transform them into much more pleasurable boats. Some are known first as pleasure wherries, and then finally as the wherry yachts. Now back then, there were hundreds of these wherries around here, but nowadays, just 8 of them survive, and 5 of those are looked after here on our right-hand side. This place known as Barton House Railway. It's a miniature steam railway built there back in 1963. As we go past it here, you can see a couple of miniature tracks there running around the edge of the garden. But it is also the home of the Wherry Yacht Chartered Trust. Underneath this green awning, as we go past it there, you should see a couple of wherry yachts just lurking underneath. Now, these wherries, they really are the icons of the area. They're a massive part of Norfolk Broads history, and we'll go into them in a bit more detail at various parts of the trip. But it's always nice to get a little bit of an introduction to them inside Barton House there. Now in terms of our location here, a little bit of geography for you. We're travelling down this tidal river known as the River Bure. It goes for about 25 miles further down to Great Yarmouth. There of course it flows out to the North Sea, and currently it dissects these 2 separate villages. We have Houghton to our left and the village of Wroxham to our right. And there are some fantastic riverside properties here. None more so really than Bureside Lodge, this lovely yellow rendered house away to our left there with that lovely thatch roof on top. That particular one is only about 3 years old or so. It is one of the newest houses around the area. It is lovely to see a thatch roof going on top of a new build property. They're a very popular choice around the area. We'll see plenty more of them as we carry on out of the villages this morning. Also a very traditional one as well. But again, I'll go into that in a bit more detail further on, because that particular one was all made from local Norfolk reed and sedge, which in itself is a little bit of a rare thing nowadays. But in terms of the houses around, there's quite a variety of them. There's pretty much a 50-50 split between the ones that are lived in privately by their owners and the other ones that are then let out to people on holidays. There are signs around signaling which ones are which. There are pretty good road links to them all as well. It isn't just by river that you have access to these houses. I can't imagine trying to move house by boat been a particularly fun thing to achieve. And probably the best example really of this mixture and variety of different properties comes up down this next little stretch. Away to the right hand side here, in the distance coming into view, we have this very lovely grand house known as Brynwood, definitely at the higher end of the scale. A lovely setting over there in the late morning sunshine. But then to our left, we then have something a little bit more unassuming. Lovely characterful cottage there with the blue and white colours. Again, that lovely thatched roof on it there. This particular one, called Leisure Hour, is the oldest house around the area, built back in the late 1910s. So you can see different styles of properties around the whole area. But one thing they do all have in common is the way that they're built. Mainly how the structure is underneath them, their foundations. They're all built on top of pilings, mainly steel pilings that go down maybe 60 or 70 feet into the ground, then stick up maybe about 2 or 3 feet above the surface. And what that gives is this good solid foundation for these houses to then be built from, which is very, very important around the area because the land this close to the river can often be quite soft. And if you don't build them on top of these pilings, it means they can quite easily and quite quickly sink down into them. So it's very, very important for that. But what it also does, of course, is it lifts them above the surface and alleviates any issues that may come with flooding. Now, admittedly, it's not too tidal down this end of the river. You've only got about 6 inches rise and full. But if you get a particularly high tide, it may overlap the quay heading and maybe the garden gets a bit damp. But normally the houses are fairly unscathed. So once again then, a couple more lovely thatched buildings away to our left-hand side. The first one, Water's Edge Cottage, is a holiday let. You can see the sign outside of there. The one next to it is privately owned. It's actually the last house in the village of Houghton by the river here. And that particular roof is actually the newest one around the area. That was completed around about 18 months or so ago. It's a lovely view of that very, very nice house indeed there. Then on the right we have one of the more famous houses around the area. In between these two fairly large drooping willow trees we have a fairly long garden. Down the end of said garden is a lovely house called Heronby. And that was once owned by the popular entertainer George Formby, well known for his comical songs and ukulele accompaniment. At his time of ownership it was named Beraldine after his wife, and they had 3 boats, all of which were built by local boat builders, and they're all then called the Lady Beryl. So a very lovely house there, but also one that's got that little bit of history attached to it as well.